You are watching the Love and Money Show, and today I have a very special guest. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, Tiffany, I want to start out by asking you to tell us who you are and what do you do?
Yes, so my name is Tiffany Grant, and I run Money Talk with Tiff, which is a financial education platform. So I'm very passionate about teaching people about money and the different ways they can save, invest, spend, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's pretty much what I do. I blog, I podcast, and I'm on all social media platforms because I love social media.
Okay, that's cool. Financial education.
Mhm.
Um, Tiffany, what is your background?
Yeah, so uh, as far as education is concerned, my background's in business. So I have my bachelor's and my master's in business, but I have worked in a variety of different industries. I've had a lot of different businesses, probably at least 10 in my adult years. And I'm very passionate about business. I'm passionate about finance. I'm currently an accredited financial counselor. My previous life when I was in corporate was in HR, so I have my SHRM CP certification. So I have a lot of knowledge about a lot of different things, but like I tell people, I know a lot about a lot, but I don't know everything. But I'm passionate about business, especially small minority businesses, and helping people with their monies.
Okay, cool, Tiffany. Can you talk about why did you become interested in finances?
Yeah, so that's a really good question because it's something that a lot of people care nothing about, but for some reason I'm passionate about it. But I think it has come from when I was younger. I've always been kind of aware of money. I like saving money, and also just growing up, I realized what not to do with money just by looking at the struggles and stuff that everybody else around me went through. And so that's what kind of piqued my interest in wanting to learn as much as I possibly could so I don't have to go down that same trajectory. So I was like, you know what, let me try to learn as much as I can so that way I don't make the same mistakes as my family and friends. So that's kind of how I got started with money. And like I said, I've always been into business. So I've always had a business ever since I was even little, but I've always been about making money and saving money. So the more I learned, the more I became very, very interested. And I was like, while I'm gaining this knowledge, I might as well share it out so that way I can help other people.
Okay, Tiffany.
Mhm.
I just want, can you walk us through your struggles with finances? Like, I know you said a bachelor's and a master's. What was going on during that time? Because I think this will be an inspiration to people.
Yeah, so I had my oldest son. So I was a teen mom. So I was pregnant at 17. I had my oldest son when I was 18. So I had just graduated actually from high school. And so, back then people were like, oh, you're not going to really amount to anything. You ruin your life. Now you're going to, be flipping burgers for the rest of your life. Nothing wrong with flipping burgers, but that's the type of stuff that I was getting. And I was like, you know what? I can show you better than I can tell you. Because I'm one of those people where if somebody says I can't do anything, do something, or, gives me a challenge, I always step up to it. So I decided to enroll myself in community college because it was too late. I had got accepted into culinary school because I wanted to be a chef. I found that I was pregnant a week after I got accepted. And so I was like, I can't go all the way to Charlotte, which is where the school was, which would be like 2 hours away from my family. So I was like, you know what, let me go just apply at a community college locally so that way I can stay in town because it was too late to apply for any other universities. And so I decided to go that route. And I was like, well, since I can't be a chef, I think I'm going to try business because that's something else that I'm interested in. So I applied, I started at community college, did 2 years there. Then I transferred to a university and finished up my bachelor's. And all throughout that time, of course, I had my son, raising him and working and going to school full time. And then after I transferred, um, it was a very difficult time in my life because I had broke up with my oldest son's dad, and he was just being a butthole. And so he kept my son away from me
Oh,
for like 8 months or so. And during that time, I was just failing everything because I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't think. All I was doing was thinking about my son. And it was a very difficult time. So I ended up dropping all of my classes or failing. And I said, you know what? This is what the enemy wants to happen. So this is not what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep going. And so after I got my son back, I got back on track and was able to finish and graduate, still working or what have you. And then in 2014, I had my youngest son. So he actually just turned 8. And while I had him, that's when I was going. So in 2018, no, 20, 2016 was when I started my master's, and I graduated in 2018. So all throughout my master's time, I had 2 kids. At some points, I had 2 jobs and going to school full time. So I was very, very busy. Luckily, I had a good support system in my family. So they would keep my kids while I went to school. But as soon as classes were over, they were calling me like, okay, where you at? um, so, I mean, that's pretty much how I got through that whole time period. And it also gave me more perspective and more insight into what I was doing with my money, because as soon as I had my oldest son, I said, okay, this is going to be a little person that's going to depend on you for the rest of your life. So you need to get it together so you can be a good example for him. And then, of course, when I had my second son, that put even more flame to the fire. So it really got me on track. And I say I'm grateful for them every single day, because I feel like they really put me on this trajectory that I am on right now, to just be more ambitious and do more and try to be a good support system for them. So
okay. Well, that story will be inspirational to people who feel like they can't make it. And congratulations to you.
thank you so much. Yeah, that is my hope. I talk to a lot of teen moms, teen parents in general, because I'm like, you create your own reality. So at the end of the day, like if you feel like you don't have a good support system, find a support, find your tribe. There's people out there that would love to help. There's people out there that want to see you succeed. So just make sure that you make those connections, because it's definitely life changing.
Okay. Is that is a lot. 2 sons, 2 jobs, and work. I'm like,
Yeah.
how in the world are you doing that?
Yeah, it was a lot. And it did teach me a lot about time management too, because I had to juggle everything. And also at that time, even though, I did have 2 jobs at times, I was still living like refund check to refund check. So what I would do is every time I would get either a tax refund or a school refund, I would pay up my rent, because my thought process was, okay, even if I don't have enough money for anything else, at least we have a roof over our head. So I would pay up my rent for like 6 months at a time or so until the next check came. And that's kind of how I sustained for like a year or two during that time.
Okay.
Mhm.
So Tiffany, as far as your work history goes, what is your average salary before you decide to quit your job? Or if it's too personal, then it's okay.
No, I just had to think back because I've been a full-time entrepreneur since 2019. I think when I left corporate America, my salary was about 60,000 or so. And that was, so I did HR, and then I also worked at a financial firm because I was trying to do like a career change. But then that's when I realized that this type of finance is not what I want to do. I would rather help people more, budget, do things like that versus talking to them about investments and stuff. So that's when I decided to just go out on my own and do my own thing. But I would say, when I left corporate America, it was about 60,000. But when I started in corporate America, it was probably about 11 or $12 an hour. So
Okay. Um, so Tiffany, so what advice would you give to people who their greatest desire is to get out of that job that they're in?
Yeah, so I help a lot of people with this. And the first order of business is to have a plan. Now, when I say have a plan, make sure you get your money in order, because I tell people when you have your money in order, it gives you a certain level of freedom, not just financially, but mentally, like spiritually, everything kind of falls in line once you get this together, once you get your mind together. So, one of the ways that helped me get out of corporate was I had my budget that I was doing every month. I knew exactly how much I needed to make per day. So I took my monthly expenses, broke it down to a daily rate, and I said, okay, at that time it was like $50 a day. I said, okay, I can make $50 a day driving 2 to 3 hours with Uber and Lyft. You know, if things hit the fan, I can say, okay, let me drive for a couple of hours and I can make my $50. So when you start looking at money that way, you know how everything is flowing. You start breaking it down to small goals versus looking at the bigger picture. Then you realize how possible it is to make these drastic changes in your life. So that's kind of how I did it. I broke it down. I said, okay, I know how much I need to make. And then my next challenge was just finding out how to make it. So, you know, I had Money Talk with Tiff already going. I was driving Uber and Lyft. I had a variety of different side hustles. So that's when in my mind, it kind of clicked like, okay, I can really just work 2 to 3 hours a day versus 8 or 9 or more, because I was salary at the job, and I could still have the rest of my day. So, you know, once you get a good concept of how your money's flowing, you know what your money's doing, then it kind of opens up your mind to the different possibilities that there could be. Then also have a plan B, because I know I quit corporate twice. So the first time, I thought I saved up enough. I think I saved up like a month's worth of expenses because I was like, oh, it should be fine. But being an entrepreneur is very, very difficult, and especially in the beginning stages. So I kind of underestimated how difficult it was going to be. So I ended up having to go back to corporate, which I tell people, please don't burn any bridges, because you never know who you might need when you might need it. So I ended up having to go back to a previous employer, which kind of worked out because they needed someone to step into that position because they were struggling finding someone. And they were like, oh, Tiffany's back on the market. Let's see if she can do it. So it kind of worked out for the both of us. But once I went back, I said, okay, this is just going to be a temporary. And this is what I told them too. And that's another thing. Be honest about what you're looking for, what you're trying to do, because you'll be surprised how much employers are willing to work with you. So I told them, I said, look, this is a temporary thing because I was already out on my own. I really want to do this, do my own business full time. So I'm not looking for anything long term. This is how much I want to make. You know, I was spelling everything out, and they was like, okay, fine. So we ended up having a good deal. And when I went back, I said, okay, Tiffany, 1 month was not enough. So make sure this time you have at least 3 months or so saved up. And so that's what I did. And then I ended up quitting corporate again in about a few more months after that. So yeah, I mean, it was a long journey, but I figured it out. And now, knock on wood, I haven't had to go back since. So I think things are going good now.
Okay. That's a good nugget to try not to burn bridges. I had to think about how many bridges I burned.
Yeah, but it's so true because a lot of people, you know, they'll just chuck the deuces, not do a 2 week notice, just like, all right, I'm out, or whatever the case may be. And, you know, also me previously being in HR, I'm like, no, don't do that. Like, at least work out a 2 week notice. And if they decide that they want to let you go before your 2 week notice, then cool. But give them the opportunity to find somebody else, replace you, things like that. Just give them the courtesy. The job that called me back, I actually was graceful enough, like when I was with them the first time, to give them a 1 month notice. So they were able to take their time to find my replacement, things like that. So I left on really, really good terms. So when we both needed something, it was like, oh, well, let's just invite Tiffany back because we know she's a good worker. She left on good terms. She treated the company right. We treated her right. You know, it'll be a situation. So always. And honestly, from an HR perspective too, I always tell people when it's time for your exit interview, don't go in there just burning everything down.
Don't set the place on fire.
Right. Even if you were miserable, like if it's a situation where it was horrible, 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 and you have no intentions of going back and you're like, they need to know the real, then cool. But if it's a situation where it wasn't like horrible, like it wasn't that bad, you just found a better opportunity, just say, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciated being here. Keep it on a positive note, because I also noticed that if you go in and you're just all negative, sometimes it can ruin your chances of coming back if you need to. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, definitely. Those are some good nuggets. And so, when you left corporate for the final time,
Mhm.
what did you do to support yourself initially? And can you talk about some of the businesses that you have now?
Yeah. So when I left corporate the second time, so finally, I already had Money Talk with Tiff going. So I actually got to a point where I had built my business up to where I had quite a few clients. Like it was self-sufficient already. Like it was self-sustaining. So that was a good thing. But I also was still driving Uber and Lyft, of course, until Corona hit. And then let me see what else. I make soap. So sometimes I would make soap, just to fill in the gaps. Just random stuff. I had a bunch of yard sales, like all types of stuff. Any way I could make my quota is what I would do. So that's why I've had so many different businesses, because I'm like, whatever it is I love to do, there's always a way to monetize it. And that's just my mindset around everything. So I figured that out actually when I was in seventh grade. I had a business where, because I love to read. So I had a business where I would buy books on Amazon and I would sell them back to people. And that's how I would keep my reading library up. Like every time I wanted a new book, I'm like, okay, let me sell this one. Let me get the money. Let me get the new book, that type of thing. And that's when it clicked for me that it doesn't matter what you love to do, whether it's reading, writing, I don't know, cleaning, there's always someone out there willing to pay you for it. So that's kind of how I lived my life, and had so many businesses.
Okay. Um, what um, what kind of businesses are you into now?
Okay, so now I kind of cut back. So during the pandemic, I had like 6 different businesses or so going at the same time. It was kind of ridiculous. But now I just do Money Talk, which has multiple different ways that it makes money, because I just started a digital marketing firm side of that. So everything's under the Money Talk with Tiff umbrella, but now it has business consulting, it has financial counseling, it has digital marketing, different things. And then in those umbrellas, there's multiple ways that I make money. So now, instead of stretching myself over a whole bunch of different brands and different businesses and different industries, I keep it all under the same umbrella and I just do everything that I love to do, if that makes sense. And so it kind of, instead of, making soap, and then I had a logistics business, and then I had me and my ex was doing tie-dye and just all different types of stuff. Now it's focused on business, money, and HR. That's it. Oh, and digital marketing. That's it. So everything that I do falls under that same umbrella.
Okay.
Mhm.
Tiffany, what is your favorite book or some book recommendations?
So many. So as far as personal finance is concerned, one of my favorites that really opened my eyes to thinking about money differently was Your Money or Your Life
Oh,
by
I
Vicki
heard of that.
Robin. Yeah, it's good. She is the mother of the FIRE movement, so financially independent, retire early. So that book is eye-opening because it gets into looking at your money at like time. So for instance, let me just give the audience an example. Let's say you make $15 an hour, but you want $60 shoes. So then you equate that to, okay, 4 hours of my life is given to these shoes. So is it really worth 4 hours of my life? And so you start looking at all of your purchases and everything from that mindset. And it kind of makes you look at things a little differently. I know when I read that book, it kind of made me look at my job differently because I'm like how much is my life really worth? How much is each hour of my time really worth? And that actually gave me the confidence to get a position that was double or even triple what my salary was at that time. So that book is very, very good. I also enjoyed Personal Finance Wise, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi.
Okay, I read that.
Yeah, I really like that book. It had a lot of practical stuff. So, like, as I was reading, I was implementing some of the things that he was saying. And I thought that was really cool. And then if you look at business on the business end, I really like Measure What Matters. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but that one is about using OKRs, so objectives and key results in your business and using that to grow. So that's a strategy that Netflix, Google, like Facebook, all of the big name companies that have grown really quick, they use the OKR strategy. So it was really interesting getting to know how to use that. And I actually started implementing that in my business and saw a lot of growth. So I would say those are the main books that I can think about right now. I've read so many books. I'm such a book nerd, but those are the ones that are coming to the top of my head as good reads.
Okay, I haven't heard of the last one. I have to check that out.
Yes, please do, especially if you have a business. It was very eye-opening for me.
Okay, Tiffany. So I'm going to switch over to the love category. It's a love and money show.
Mhm.
And just two questions. Are you single or married?
So it's complicated because technically I'm married, but I'm legally separated. So single-ish.
Okay, Tiffany. Um, can you tell us something that you learned about money as it relates to relationships that could help somebody else?
Yes. So there were a lot of missteps that I made in my previous marriage. And I feel like one of them, now, this just depends on who you're with. Everybody's different. But for me, one of the missteps was combining everything and making everything joint. Unfortunately, this was not the right person to do that with because I was just looking at like my grandparents and that's how they do things. They have everything together. My grandma handles the bills. My grandpa kind of brings the money in and, everything just been flowing so smooth my whole life with them. So I was like, oh, well, this is how I should do my marriage as well. But you can't do that with everybody. So I feel like that was one of my biggest missteps was making everything a joint account and making everything combined and not having our separate accounts for our personal stuff. So that was one. Another one was refinancing my house while I was married.
Oh, tell me about that.
Yeah. So if you do that, so I've had my house since 2017. I met my husband December of 2019. We got married in May of 2020. And we've been legally separated since December 2021. So if you do the math, we were only married for like a year and a half, right? Well, last year while we were married, I refinanced my house. So what happened was that put his name on my deed. So now that we're going through this whole separation/divorce process, now he kind of has a stake in my house, even though he wasn't really here for that long. So it was very, very interesting. And, honestly, I had consulted with people before I made the decision, but I was like, oh my gosh, interest rates look so good. I really want to lock in this interest rate. And kind of went against my better judgment and did it. And I wasn't thinking, of course, you're not thinking that, okay, this is not going to work out, and all that stuff. But now it made it a huge mess. So that's just something to keep in mind if you have a house and your spouse is not already on it and you decide to refinance, at least in the state of North Carolina, that's how it works. So yeah.
That's interesting. That's a good learning lesson. But I'm sorry that all of this is happening to you.
Oh, it's fine. It's just how life is. And, I learned a lot during this situation. So that's why I'm just so open about sharing because I feel like it could help someone else. Um, but I learned a lot. And I feel like some of the lessons were very much needed because I was very, um, what's the word? I'm very like nice and I believe in people and which don't get me wrong, I still do, but I'm not as naive as I was before. So I feel like it was a good learning opportunity for me to kind of go through some things so that way I learn how not to do it next time.
Right. And plus, you're helping a lot of people by sharing the information.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we also had a business together, so that has been a mess trying to untangle as well. So if you're thinking about owning a business with your spouse, make sure you understand all the nuts and bolts if you all do decide to separate or divorce, because I can tell you now, it is a huge mess.
That's interesting. It's something to think about.
Absolutely. We had a logistics business and it was an LLC. So technically, I'm still on it, even though I have nothing to do with the business now. So it's just something to think about. There was a lot of lessons learned. Now I would love if anybody wants to reach out, I would love to dive into the details, but just something to think about. Like if you do have a business with your spouse, just think about succession planning and think about like what happens if it doesn't work.
Okay, that's good to know. So, Tiffany, I just have one last question. Where can people reach you if they want to learn more about the podcast and some of the financial services that you offer?
Yeah, so you can find me at moneytalkwitht.com. So that's kind of my home base. You can find out all about me and all of the service that I offer. And then also my podcast is Money Talk with Tiff. And on there, I just interview people, different people from all around the world about how they make money, spend money, invest money, because I believe the way out of poverty is ideas. So the more ideas I can spread, the better. And then you can find me on all social media platforms, and I mean everything, at Money Talk with T. So that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, LinkedIn, everywhere. So you can definitely find me as long as you type in Money Talk with Tiff.
Okay, Tiffany, sounds good. Thank you for being on the show and sharing your story.
All right. Thank you so much, Shakira, for having me. It was a pleasure.